What's the best way to handle someone who constantly interrupts me? G'day and welcome to this week's episode of Ask Leah. Now, before I share some key practical tips with you, I want to encourage a bit of self-reflection. I want you to ask yourself, is the way I'm communicating contributing to this situation? If you're dealing with someone who tends to have an aggressive communication style or even assertive, someone who is fast-paced, really likes direct communication, succinct communication. If you are someone who talks very slowly, is vague, speaks around an issue rather than gets to the point, that is like a red rag to a bull for a direct communicator. And I'm not saying that it's right that they interrupt you when you speak like that, but I do encourage you to consider, I am always saying start with you. So consider whether you could improve your communication as well. If you're dealing with someone who you know is fast paced, do a bit of thinking before the conversation so that you're clear on what you want to say, so that you can go in and get to the point, and then you're less likely to be interrupted. But let's face it, sometimes no matter what you do, other people are those chronic interrupters. It can be a power play, it can be deliberately to cut you off, but some people do it unintentionally. Some people who are very passionate, again, who are fast-paced or neurodivergent, can be the people who jump in over the top without even meaning to, because they're excited or because they've had a thought and they don't want it to slip out of their head, or it's how they connect, particularly in the case of people with neurodivergence. So what can you do when it's a bit of an ongoing issue, either in conversation or in a meeting? I want to share with you 3 key tips. The first one is to speak up warmly and assertively. This isn't about escalating the situation, it's about managing the situation. So let the other person know that you hadn't finished your point. And this can be really polite, but someone jumps in and cuts you off. Can I finish that point, please? Or can you let me finish that point? I hadn't actually finished. So be warm and polite and let them know. Point number 2. Use body language to your advantage here. And you'll notice I even did it unintentionally when I said, I haven't actually finished my point, or can you let me finish that point? I didn't do a big stop sign in your face and say, stop, I hadn't finished, and make a big aggressive deal out of it, but just that little hand signal of, sorry, I hadn't finished my point, or can you let me finish? That little hand signal can set the tone and also give that visual cue that some people really need, that they have interrupted. So try that as well with the warmth and direct assertive tone. The third point, particularly if it is an ongoing issue, is to call it out and address it. And sometimes it's not about doing it in the meeting itself. It might be a conversation with that person after the meeting. Again, you don't have to make a big song and dance. Remember, it might not be intentional. And what it might look like is saying something like, hey, I'm not sure if you're aware, but I've noticed that when we're in conversation about this issue that you're really passionate about, I'm often not getting a chance to finish my sentences. I appreciate that you care a lot about this and I want to hear your perspectives, but I also want to make sure I've got the chance to share mine so that we're considering all views here. And what you'll often find is you can find a compromise. Now, not always, like I said, sometimes it can be the power play, but when you are drawing attention to it and making it clear and then being succinct in your answer, hopefully that makes a difference too. So there you go, some tips on the self-reflection piece for how you communicate, but also how to address the chronic interrupter. Another point that you can do here as a bit of a side one is if it's a real issue that's not getting addressed and you're not chairing the meeting, or even if you are chairing the meeting, think about some facilitation skills that can help you make sure all voices do get to be heard. It might be going around the room, letting everyone have the chance to speak, using post-it notes. There's a whole heap of strategies I can share with you there another time. if you've got a communication, leadership, self-management question you'd like answered, I can't speak now, send it through and I will do my best to answer it for you in a future episode. Cheers.